Hey, good Tuesday morning, everyone. This is First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here at NBC Charlotte. Quick update on the weather as we go through the week. Thought I'd start addressing the weekend storm, which unfortunately has gotten all the bad publicity on social media for all the wrong reasons, with very uneducated, uninformed posting of model data pretty far out, which is always frustrating for meteorologists, not because we don't like data or like sending data out. When you put it out in a vacuum, and you just post it out there as a forecast, we spend more time answering questions about bad information than questions about good information. So let's focus on the good information first. We'll focus on what's going on across the country because the active storm track continues. It's kind of funny. I heard a lot of talk about winter being over and winter kind of done. And man, February is always one of the stormiest months of the winter. And when you look at the pattern, at least for the next couple of weeks, I just don't see this end of winter that people keep proclaiming. I don't know where it's coming from, but maybe I'm completely wrong, but I just don't see it, and proof is in the pudding. We've got another big storm moving across the middle of the country. This is a multifaceted storm, and that's going to be the interesting thing about the winter storms we see in the next couple of weeks. They're going to be more of the ice, rain, sleet, snow mixture instead of all snow like we've seen in most of January with the Arctic outbreaks. But we've got a big shield of snow to the north, just an epic ice storm going on right now in parts of Arkansas, where we just have seen thunder and lightning with some of this freezing rain. So this isn't cheap freezing rain. This is the real deal. We're talking quarter, half, 3/4 inch accumulations possible in a few locations. But very impressive looking storm because you can see the jet punching in here, and you've got a little flow coming up from Texas, and by the way, Baja California, nice little swirl down there in the cloud deck. For us in the Carolinas, it's kind of interesting because what's going on is we've got a little bit of a wedging taking place right now across areas in the Carolinas. So we've got that northeasterly flow. There's a high pressure center right over New York. So what's going on is your typical wedge or cold air damming regime, where we've got cold air being pumped down. At the same time, warm, humid air above about 3,000 to 5,000 feet is pushing in some moisture, and we've got a lot of drizzle, and drizzle never shows up well on radar. So if I see these low clouds and just a little bit of returns, it's going to be kind of a raw, ugly day across the region. So let's turn off some of this and start focusing on where this storm is going to go. Well, first thing we're going to look at is the GFS model, which ironically enough this winter has done a much better job than the European model. This is the P-type. I'm not going to get into totals because really it's more about the impact. You could see how the things unfold here as we go into tonight. The winter storm is going to be moving across the middle of the country and really impacting a large chunk of the country. It's this line right here where if you're a meteorologist in the Ohio Valley, you just pull in what little hair you have out right now because it's the borderline between cold rain, snow, sleet, freezing rain. I mean, it's such borderline. I don't think people understand the variables that go into that. It's just not, is it going to rain? It's a tenth of a degree difference, not only at the ground, but off the surface. I mean, people often live down here at the ground and we think that's all that happens in weather, but what's going on above our head is so important. And if you have just a small change in the warm nose or the cold layer at the surface, it could have huge ramifications on what kind of weather you see over just a couple county distance. So these variables, the more variables you have in a math equation, the more problems you have with getting an error. You know, we've all done math, and even if you're horrible at it, you know if it's just a simple equation, a plus b equals c, that's simple. But when you have a plus b times c divided by x, multiplied divided by this, and you've got all these variables, there's just more room for error. And it's the same thing in weather forecasting. So cut the meteorologist a little bit of slack because this is not an easy forecast to develop. Anybody that gets remotely close is doing a great job. So that storm system exits the northeast pretty quickly. And then we're going to start focusing on the next storm system moving in towards the end of the week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw up the isobars as well. Big Arctic high builds in for a couple days. So the cold air is in place. But what's interesting is the GFS model has been kind of all over the place, even with this storm. We had a split flow, so we had one northern branch system and a southern branch system at one point. We had two lows, which, anytime I see two lows 7 to 10 days out, it just screams, don't even bite on it. So what it looks like is going to happen is we're going to get a main low to form in the Ohio Valley. All the Carolinas, while we will be wedged in and there is a small chance of ice, it really looks like a cold rain right now, though I'm not going to be shocked if we see a little bit of ice. If we're going to bust this forecast from a cold rain to something else, it's not going to be to snow. it would be cold rain or ice. I think snow is just off the table right now. And then the system gets to the coast, you see a secondary low form on the Carolina coast. Now this is where things get tricky, because if this low dominates, all of a sudden this low weakens, and what happens is you start wrapping in cold air on the backside, and if that cold air gets in here quick, then a lot of what you see rain could transition to freezing rain, sleet, or snow. That's the one monkey wrench in this whole forecast, is what happens with this low. And if you forecast in the southeast to east, this transition from the inland low to the coastal low is really difficult, because you never know when it's going to happen. Sometimes it'll skip over areas in the Piedmont and then re-intensify on the coast. But it looks like to me that the main low takes over sometime Sunday into Monday. And as the Monday system cranks up, then you get a massive nor'easter. This is the first legitimate, significant nor'easter we've seen this season. And look at this thing crank up on the coast. So while the Carolinas may get cold rain with a little bit of snow, if you live in the Northeast, this has all the makings of an epic snowstorm if this unfolds. Because remember, there's still debate on whether this low shifts to the coast or not. So as with any forecast, please keep checking back. This isn't one of those things you check on Monday and then boom, I'm done with my forecast. I don't have to look again. Please keep checking back, and make sure you stay with the local meteorologist in your specific region, because they know the area better. They have more experience with that, and it really does help. Stay local, stay human, stay off the apps. They're going to be completely useless to you. Honestly, the stock iPhone app is probably the worst thing for the weather business in the history of mankind, because people just go to it and think that's a legitimate forecast. Remember, quantity of data does not equal quality of data. Apps are like McDonald's. There's one on every corner. Doesn't mean the food is good for you. In weather apps, there's a million of them. They're easy to access. It doesn't mean the information is good. Make sure you're getting good information. So there's the low exiting. On the backside, another Arctic high builds in. So right now, if I were to pin this down for my region, the Charlotte region, I'm sticking with primarily all rain. I did want to show you the ensembles. We'll go to that ensembles for the Charlotte area. This is snow, and you see, as often the case, these ensembles are very telling. There just isn't a lot of snow in the sounding or the ensembles, and even the snow that's there is really light. So when you look at the probabilistic versus the deterministic, you're talking tenths of an inch of snow. So snow is probably out of play. And I start looking at the short range ensembles as well. And you can see on the short range ensembles, this is for Friday into Saturday, initial batch. You're talking less than a 1/100th of an inch. That's not measurable. Remember, snow is only measured in tenths of an inch. So anybody that shows you 1/100th of an inch of snow in a forecast, it's bogus. We don't measure that. That's a trace. That isn't even measurable snow. So don't even bother looking at that type of stuff. But I think this is a great graphic that Dr. Maui puts out on Weather Bell. It's the 1 inch probability over a 24-hour period. And I'm going to switch to that because it really tells you the percentage of getting 1 inch. And you can see where this storm is going. Everyone's going to get clobbered, 6 inches plus. The next system, you see a 0 to 10% chance over the Carolinas, and I think that's probably maybe too high. And then the system develops going into the weekend, and you can see how the track develops. And the probabilities are pretty low for this distance. You're talking 30, 40%. This is 1 inch, mind you. This is not several inches. So even the ensembles are having a tough time grasping where the heaviest snow is going to be until it gets to the coast and it gets a little bit more favorable. But I want you to look at the Carolinas right there. 0 to 10% probability of 1 inch of snow. That's minuscule. So in my opinion, you're not going to see a big storm in the Carolinas. It looks like a rainstorm to me right now. But this system's a real deal, and the weekend system is a real deal for the Northeast. It just isn't a big deal for the Carolinas. So complicated system. I wanted to post something. I will post further updates throughout the week. Make sure you stay tuned because a subtle change in track means all the difference in the world for impacts to your area. So stay tuned. It's a wild week, a wild month of February. It's always crazy. Get crazy pattern shifts. You get warm, cold, even severe weather. Stay tuned to your local forecast because I think it's going to be vitally important as we go through the month of February. Of course, I'll have complete updates on our local weather starting today at 4, 5, and 6 on NBC Charlotte. Always follow me Facebook, Twitter, Google+, or my blog, wcnc.com. We've got you covered. Doesn't matter. Check in with me anytime you have a question. And as always, be safe and stay dry and cool out there. Or it's dry and warm, I should say, out there today because it is cool. It's only about 39 degrees.